So next up, we have a wonderful panel, to talk about, hey, what are the opportunities for startups, right? So this is a conference about entrepreneurship, so we are all excited to think about what's next. So we have a wonderful panel. Let me start with moderator. Our moderator, Aditya Raghupathy, is an investor from Schematic Ventures, a graduate from Georgia Tech. People were talking about, hey, manufacturing, probably computer science is more cooler than manufacturing. But when I look up Aditya, right, he was a data science computer vision guy from Georgia Tech, and he moved to manufacturing. Personally, I'm curious, what made him to start focusing on manufacturing. I'm sure he can tell some stories there. The other thing very interesting about Aditya, right, he started a consortium, specifically focused on Industry 4.0. He's running, a lot of meetups and trying to, spearhead, bring the like-minded people, focus on manufacturing. With that, let me welcome Aditya to the stage and start the panel. Thank you, Aditya.
Good morning. Great to meet everybody here. Thanks, Anil. So like he said, I'm an investor at Schematic Ventures. We're an early stage digital industrial fund focused on supply chain, manufacturing, robotics, and energy. Went and worked at Deloitte for a couple of years in their smart factory group, which was really cool. Got to work on the factory floor, which is a unique experience for an investor, pretty rare experience. And then joined the team here. And for more context, we're investors in companies like Altana, Fulcrum, Plus One Robotics, and a labor platform called Gig and Take. So, but I'm pumped to have 4 unbelievable, impressive investors here that have been sort of behind a lot of the innovation that's happened in the ecosystem to date. We've got Gayathri, or you go by G, I think. G Radhakrishna from Hitachi Ventures, Kevin Chen from Lamb Capital, Anil Joshi from Unicorn Ventures, and at the end, Lior Susan from Eclipse Ventures. So I don't think I'll be able to do the justice that the amount of work these guys have done to kind of build up their reputation. So I'll pass it off to them to introduce themselves. Lior, can we start with you kind of at the end there?
Sure. Thanks for having me. Lior Susan with Eclipse. We're a $4.5 billion fund based here in the Bay Area, focusing on investing and building companies in the intersection between technology and a physical world, build multiple companies in the manufacturing space.
I'm Anil Joshi from Unicorn India Ventures. We are a Mumbai, India-based fund, more deep tech focused fund. Currently, we have 35 companies in portfolio out of 2 funds. Thank you.
Hello, Kevin Chen with Lamb Capital, which is the corporate VC arm of Lamb Research. Lamb Research, for those of you who don't know, is a very large publicly traded semiconductor equipment company. We provide manufacturing solutions to the fabs of the world. We have about 24 investments, direct investments, and as well as a handful of fund investments. And we focus on the semiconductor ecosystem as well as the manufacturing ecosystem.
Thank you, Liam. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Aditya, for the introduction. I'm currently with Hitachi Ventures. We are the venture capital arm of Hitachi, which is a Japanese conglomerate with over 800 subsidiaries. We manage about 600 million assets under management for Hitachi. We invest broadly in 3 kind of pillars: green, digital technologies, and then we also invest in healthcare and industrial sectors. So manufacturing is right up our alley. And right before joining Hitachi Ventures, I used to be at Micron, so I've had the privilege of working with Kevin from that standpoint, and we have made investments in manufacturing at Micron, and Hitachi has done the same as well. So.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for those intros. So, I mean, you guys have been around the space for, I don't know, combined here, probably more than a century of experience in manufacturing. You've been around, you've seen all the innovation that's happened in this space.
You're very young.
Yeah. I promise you, I'm also not that blue. So, so, I mean, to get going, how do you think the receptiveness to manufacturing technology, to startups, to innovation in this space has changed since you guys got started?
Sure, I can go first. I think there's been a lot of emphasis and interest in manufacturing, and I think with COVID, actually, it went even more. the supply chain crisis was a trigger. AI in manufacturing was also a trigger, and now I think generative AI, and IoT, those trends will push it even more. So.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think recently there's been, as a reflection of what G just mentioned, just a number of new funds that have been created, and both private funds as well as corporate venture funds that are focused on deep tech or hard tech. I used to spend, prior to my role here, I was in the renewable energy industry, and then moved from there to the agriculture. My point in bringing that up is that, when we look at a sustainable future, a lot of the technologies that need to be in place are, hard science-based. They're engineering-based technologies, and behind that is manufacturing. So I think as we get into the panel discussion, there's just tremendous opportunities in a variety of areas, and I think Silicon Valley, where we sit here, has seen a lot of this come, sort of back from our original roots. We've seen a lot of chemistry, biology, obviously electronics, manufacturing, robotics come back to this area in particular. So it's really an exciting time.
It's interesting. By nature, manufacturing is capital intensive, and fund typically like us have a life to live, right? Unlike corporate venture arm, they can continue longer, but we need to liquidate our holdings within our life of the fund. What has happened, like now with the evolution of IoT or smart devices, and acceptance of contract manufacturing, I think it has become easier for us to look at investments. Like we invested in one company which is basically catering to power sector, digitizing the metering. Right, it's required a lot of investment, but now this company is only focusing on data layer over digital meters, and it's actually become investable, right? So that's the reason we have started exploring. Earlier it was difficult. One, it's very capital intensive, gestation is long, right? Unless until you get scale, we can't look at exit. But now with digitization, I think it has become shorter, doable for people like us.
Yeah, I would say, manufacturing, it's about 20% of the world GDP, so call it about $20 trillion if you take all of the manufacturing, electronics, metal, and others. So the opportunity was always there, right? Then I think you needed a catalyst that came in a matter of COVID, lack of resilience, and manufacturing. I think a huge factor, the whole geopolitics issues, onshore manufacturing, a $1 trillion infrastructure bill in this country, India, putting out tons of money and tariffs and other things to accelerate. You needed to have success. You have both Tesla and SpaceX that are not automotive or space companies. They are very, very modern manufacturing company that the application is automotive and space. So you got the market cap to support, and I think that's all catching the market from a technological point of view. Robotics, cloud infrastructure, open source software, computer vision, a lot of trends that happened in the last decades that all converge to what sounds like a perfect time now.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I think all four of you touched on it. So you've talked about energy, you've talked about resilience, you've talked about sort of the reshoring initiative. So I mean, I think $200 billion has been discussed as being invested in the manufacturing sector broadly. 31 $1 billion plants. I'm from Georgia. I went to Georgia Tech. The battery belt is now a new type of belt that we've got in the United States here. So lots of talk, especially in sort of the EV, electrification, semiconductor space. So what opportunities do you guys see, in those spaces in particular? We'll start with you, Anil.
So morning, I think Anand spoke about growth in battery space, right? Almost 10x kind of growth he has indicated. Now I come from a country like India. We have our own challenges, developing country, and there is adoption of EV space. So we cannot, as I said, as a VC, we cannot look at investing in battery manufacturing facility. In fact, I had invested in past, but that was more to do with lead acid. Now we have lithium ion, but considering the unique problem of India, we lack infrastructure to charge, right? So To solve that problem, we actually have invested in a company which is, catering to swapping stations, right? So now last mile delivery, if you look at logistics, especially two-wheeler, three-wheeler, now they continuously need to be on road. They cannot, go off road for charging a couple of hours. So this company, have their own battery management system. They got their own IPs. And they are building swap station for this, particular segment. So there, we have invested. So actually it's growing. And I see, the adoption and growth of EV space is going to be quite large considering the, challenges we have on, petroleum side. So I think it's a better option, cleaner option.
Cool.
I would say that I think the most interesting opportunity in my mind is companies that goes full stack. I think, Tesla and SpaceX are great examples, right? They did not trying to sell to the automotive market and new technological and the manufacturing. They did not try to sell to the space. They went full stack. I think today there is the capital, there is the talent, the technology is ready for companies to take the long road. And basically, not only we took a battery company public last year, they are not selling the technology to battery companies. They build a new manufacturing processes, new chemistry, new plants, and they sell a fully flashed, in their case, silicon nano the battery, and capture the whole value. That I think this is where a lot of the interesting opportunities right now.
And I'll talk a little bit more to maybe some of the underlying infrastructure to enable some of these technologies. I think in the semiconductor area, where we focus, I think at last count, there's been at least $100 billion committed globally, excuse me, as subsidies to promote localization of factories. I think the US was announced something like 50 billion. Europe last week announced something on the order of 40, and so on and so forth. India as well has made their announcements and onwards. And that really is the underlying infrastructure to enable big data, ChatGPT, and other applications that we talked about. But I think when we think about semiconductors, we often think of the silicon. But aside from that, there are a lot of other applications that are built on chip technology. We look at optical-based technologies, so photonics. We look at power electronics technologies based on gallium nitride and silicon carbide. We look at, once the chip is manufactured, how do you combine multiple chips together in a package, and how do you connect them, in a high-speed way? And so you look at advanced packaging. So there's a host of technologies in that particular sector. And what I think a lot of people may not realize is that, at least in manufacturing of semiconductors, that is probably, close to the pinnacle of what humankind has been able to manufacture in terms of the precision, the scale, the volume, et cetera, in order to make that happen. So I think manufacturing as a whole is alive and well, and there's a lot of opportunities for startups in this area.
No, absolutely resonate with everything that was said here. So I'll take a different angle a little bit. So manufacturing, people tend to think about sort of EV and semiconductor right now, thanks to CHIPS Act and everything. But I think there are other elements to manufacturing as well. So we heard the conversation earlier about DNA storage. So synthetic biology is becoming pretty hot. So our team is invested in a couple of companies in that space, looking at also new forms of biomanufacturing. Right? How can we leverage DNA or biology to drive new forms of materials? Because in the past, most of the materials were petrochemical derivatives. So the idea of can we leverage biology to manufacture. There is a green element as a result to it as well. So that's a new form of manufacturing. And then when we think of manufacturing, we just think of assembly lines and so on. There's so much automation that happens in that space. So I was at a Micron manufacturing facility, and to your point, it is truly the pinnacle, right? The cleanliness apparently is beyond what a surgery location would be, right? So you walk in and you see the amount of automation that happens on that manufacturing floor is also incredible. But on that side, there's so much to be leveraged from technology. So not just building the floor, but predictive maintenance. You cannot have these lines go down even for a minute, even for an hour, because that just means a lot of capacity that's lost. So there's this whole infrastructure around manufacturing and enabling the manufacturing to run smoothly, right? So there's the energy element that you talked about. What happens if a power failure happens, right? That impacts chip production, or so there's, and then I'll also talk about that's mass manufacturing, but I think technologies like AI can enable more personalized manufacturing, right? Modular manufacturing, you're able to create 3D printing, for instance. If I can create something at my home and have a 3D printer print something that I want today, can we expand that to surgery, right? Can you create parts that can go into a surgery that's based on my human body and my anatomy? So I think there's so many ways that manufacturing can expand into, and I think we're just touching the tip of the iceberg from that standpoint.
Awesome. No, I mean, I think that makes total sense. And actually, like, tying that point to the point that Lior made at the onset, like, the industry is so broad, right? And we focused on sort of, let's say, 4 sectors here, and that's been a recurring topic throughout all the panels. What are some opportunities outside of those 4 sectors that you guys have looked at and that you guys are exploring right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think I started Eclipse in 2015. You will go in the Bay Area, talk about manufacturing, semiconductor, and energy. You are not going to get a lot of love.
Yeah.
It was like, why? I mean, sorry, I don't get it. And it's not because my English is broken, because I'm from Israel. These people here was all about enterprise software, SaaS, crypto. Those industries are not venture-backed. And we're like, yeah, but 80% of the world GDP is those industries, and we did not have the same tech transformation in those industries that we had in the worlds of IT and internet. And I think now we're closing the gap. Because the new hero is not, someone with a hoodie that built the social media, it's actually someone that's building cars and rockets. And I think we see a wave of founders now living the worlds of enterprise software, living the worlds of crypto, and starting companies, just to answer your questions, in the defense market. An industry that was like no-go for any venture before. Energy, semiconductor. We literally just building a company in the semiconductor equipment business. Lithography. I mean, who talked about lithography in the Bay Area in the last 30 years? So I just think it's super fascinating. We're going back to build, I think, the infrastructure that will allow my kids and the next generation to continue grow GDP.
I think with advancement of technology, most of the stuffs are getting automated or things are getting smarter, right? And with this AI happening, I think devices are getting smarter. We have many traditional industries which need to get evolved. Especially defense, what we're talking about. In fact, India also has opened up, defense segment, and we are seeing a lot of interest, from private investors. And we see, a lot of scope for, automating certain, surveillance, without compromising on security. I certainly see, a lot of scope going there.
I think outside, when I think of manufacturing and hard, like infrastructure projects, we also need to think about the kind of the knock-on effects or the ecosystem. So I think somebody previously talked about water recycling. What about emissions? Some of these factories emit chemicals. What do we do about that? How do we make sure the power consumption is as optimal as possible? So I think there's a lot of ancillary technologies that are needed on the sustainability side to make things more efficient, more clean. And there seems to be a trend as well in terms of investment in that sort of industrial sustainability area as well.
No, I don't want to add anything new. I truly believe that it's a whole market by itself, and thanks to digitization and technology being applied to what was viewed as a more archaic industry, I think is going to completely transform the way we look at manufacturing, right? I think back in the day, there's an anecdote that, Ford said you can get any car you want as long as it's black. I think that's going to change. And then the enabling ecosystem, as Kevin pointed out, is going to become much more robust. I have seen a bunch of lithography companies too now, right? In the past, I'd be like, who's going to buy them? What's the exit for this? But that's all going to change, I think. So the whole market's, as I said, is going to evolve quite rapidly.
Cool. Well, let's shift to everybody's favorite topic, LLMs, generative AI, all that fun stuff. The manufacturing ecosystem, old processes, ingrained processes with a lot of documentation, theoretically a pretty good use case for LLMs. Where do you guys see the opportunity to apply LLMs to the industrial sector broadly and more specifically manufacturing?
Satya Nadella was here this week, and I was on an event that he did on Tuesday. And, he talked about that. First of all, is amazing. Unbelievable. It's like, I felt like he looks like a Series A CEO. So energetic, so to the point, and he's the CEO of one of the largest companies in the globe. But his main point that I thought was amazing, he said, the LLM, basically what we do already with OpenAI, ChatGPT, 3, now 4, and the rest, it's fine. It's already scanning all of the internet, and you can do your homework, or you can write a essay, and it will do a good job. His main point, and he said that the future is to bring that to the frontline workers. And he gave an example about India. He said that he was in India a couple of months ago, and he met this young kid that took generative AI and scanned India subsidies for farmers. And he built an application that allows a farmer to use an NLP, talk to the phone, because the farmer in India don't know how to fill the form for subsidies. And he's doing text, voice to text, then text to voice, map the whole generative AI of India public forms of how to get subsidies for farmers, and he built that unbelievable solution. Wow. And I think that's the future.
So to pick from him, I firmly believe, in fact, our fund is more on digitizing stuff. We have invested quite a few companies, which are leveraging digitization, right? Making things smarter and, giving access of product and service to larger, population can only happen through digitization. Otherwise, logistics could be a big challenge. And, in pandemic, we have seen, right, like most of the people were locked, right, and couldn't move out of house. Hadn't we had, some of the digitized product, life would have been miserable. Right, and we are seeing the adoption of technology. In fact, look at India. What he's talking is happening because India has advanced almost 5 years on digitization. Like this wouldn't have been possible because the adoption of mobile technologies now even in tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities, and that's actually has made it more viable for companies to work on complex solution and get it transmitted. So I believe digitization is going to, make a lot of difference. We invested in a company. There's nothing, we have a lot of vending machines, right? It's there everywhere, but they've made vending machines smarter, right? While you make revenue out of selling product, they're also selling a lot of intelligence for brands, right? And that is actually making changes to brands to, grab more market, look at different display points. I strongly believe digitization is the way forward, right? Look at any industry.
I think one of the, so in terms of generative AI, I see companies that will take a given design, like one component, and then use generative software to propose the most optimal design of that component. A company like N Topology in the additive manufacturing space will optimize that. But I think, going forward, a lot of mechanical systems or infrastructural systems are more than just one component. They're multiple components. Anyone who's a mechanical engineer will realize interfacing different components together is where you can optimize a lot of things. On the mechanical side, then you've also got electrical and chemical and all that stuff, integration of multiple components. I think a really interesting idea or concept, which we're starting to see, is using generative AI to propose systems that are composed of multiple components that are then optimized. And so if an engineer is designing one thing and another engineering is designing another, both of those can be independently optimized, but then when they come together, are they still optimal? And I think that's where something could really be very interesting for the entire manufacturing industry in that area.
All right, I'll start with an anecdote myself. I had a recent knee injury, so I got an MRI done. And of course, I couldn't read the results. It didn't make any sense to me. So I put it on ChatGPT. Yes, OpenAI now knows I have a bum knee. But, but the end result was I was actually able to understand the MRI report. Of course, it came with the disclaimer that please talk to a medical professional, right? So I think there's a lot of uses for generative AI, like simulation was talked about, synthetic data but keep in mind that GPT means pre-trained transformer, right? That means lots of data sets to train these large language models or foundational models, pick your choice. So we talk about like the awesomeness of AI on one breath and then the need for sustainability in the same breath. So I just want to throw a challenge out there. Yes, generative AI is awesome. You know, we've talked about it. There's going to be a whole track about it. But I don't know how many of you saw the news that said Microsoft was curbing its employees from using generative AI because it was consuming so much compute that their customers were not able to use it. I think recently OpenAI said that the amount of money that they were spending from a cost standpoint was staggering to run these models and provide the results. How can we optimize this? Is this the way to go? Are we basically stripping away the innovation that was happening at a startup level to saying only those who have built these foundational models and have raised tons of cash, or are big companies themselves like Google and Microsoft that can continue to innovate in this new sort of paradigm? That's not how our brain works. We don't need volumes of data. We don't have to scan the internet to form an opinion. Can we get to an AI that does not require that kind of training? Just a thought. I don't want to espouse on generative AI, but because there's enough people doing it, so just want to leave a thought out there around how can we be sustainable in the way we operate, but also leverage technology for various use cases, right?
Cool. So we've talked about a bunch of different use cases: sustainability, labor. We've talked about sectors: EV, semi, defense. Let's say you had one piece of advice to give founders, any founders in the audience today, on building a startup in this space. What would that piece of advice be?
Oh, I can go first. It's going to be it's a sector agnostic, right? Believe in what you're building. You're not building it to make money, but you're building it because you see that there is a true sort of need in the market. And I think the timing and the stars are aligned in that, technology is viewed as an important component or an enabler for manufacturing. So go with that passion. You will get thousands of no's maybe, but you just need that one yes to go build your startup. But be at the same time open to guidance. Don't be dumb or not dumb, blind to external feedback, but hold to that North Star and go build the company of your dreams.
Great advice. There's so much out there to advise, or so much advice, but it's a tough time as well. So I have a lot of respect for founders who maybe are choosing to leave, secure jobs and go out into an uncertain market, having been an entrepreneur myself. But I would say persistence, of course. It's going to be tough. And this period of time right now is pretty tough for entrepreneurs. So as much as possible, mind your mental health, try to build a network. And try to tap into, your direct resources and then your indirect resources, and just keep at it.
I don't know if I'm qualified to advise anyone, but I would say one thing: build something, which people are willing to pay for. I think sometimes you do build, some, complex stuff, but maybe ahead of time, or it's not required by the market, right? Otherwise, somebody else would have done it. So, be in touch with your customer. Whatever may be the economic situation, I think people are willing to buy, what they need. So build something what people need rather than what you want to sell.
Yeah, last thing I will add is, and actually Satya said it on Tuesday, there is no enterprise value anymore. I thought it's brilliant to say it when you're the CEO of Microsoft, but his point is like, he's coming every day to fight, like it's the last day of Microsoft, and he must be better than everyone else, and he needs to predict the future, and he needs to go be aggressive, and I think that's the mentality.
Cool. Well, I know we have a minute left, so let's just do one quick fire question here. Unrelated to manufacturing, best book or TV show you've seen recently?
So I have a 2-year-old daughter, and we've been watching, Little Mermaid every night for the last. So that's mine. I'm not going to sing any of that.
I like to read a lot of science fiction. I feel like it gives me a lot of inspiration to dream of the future, and then kind of backtrack and say, okay, how much of that is real? And some of the predictions that some of these authors have made are pretty exceptional, especially when you also think about how society has evolved. So that's kind of my passion, to read those kind of books sometimes.
Formula One is really good in Netflix, saying.
Oh, nothing from my life. I prefer watching some odd stuff, maybe Amazon Prime or Netflix. So nothing. We have a lot of overdose of, Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn. I don't know if I can, but I try to unwind with some which takes me off from my routine.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you guys sharing your insights. Thank the panel here for a great session. Thank you guys.